Hello everyone. In this video we are going to see static methods and static variables in Java. First of all, there is a static variables concept present in C itself, where they used to preserve the values in a local variable even after the function call is over. The same kind of logic has been carried forwarded to C++ and Java, but with certain slight updates. Say for example, the static variable and the static methods in Java are not bound with objects. So this is one of the thing you have to understand. So you don't have to instantiate the object to access the static methods and static variables. Without instantiation, you will be able to access them, and they are common to all the objects created out of the class. That means there will be only one copy of a static variable or a static method too for all the objects which are all instantiated out of a single class. Okay, I'll show with an example everything. And the syntax to access the static variables and methods are, you have to use class name instead of reference variable for objects. You have to use a class name, then dot, then the static variable name, like this. So what you have to understand here is there is no need to instantiate object to access a static variable present inside a class. So it is irrespective of creation of objects, we will be able to access the static variables. So it is not bound with objects. By default, there will be a certain memory allotted while we declaring the class itself. So let us see with an example, then you will have a clear understanding. I'm going to show this static method and static variable with one small coding, which is using a employee class and the employee manager class. Okay, so for that we will be creating a class. So in my project, I'm going to create a employee manager. So I'll create one employee manager class. So if you see the employee manager class is there here. So what is our objective here is we are going to study about statics. Okay. I'm going to give an example where an employee manager in a company, there is a manager or there will be managers, and if a new employee joins the company, he will be assigned, or she will be assigned with the name, assigned with the ID. Okay, so they will have a name and their ID will be assigned by the manager. Okay, so with that example, I'm going to show how the static function is being used for this kind of scenario. So there is going to be a manager, and the manager's job is he will create new employees. Okay, so he will create new employees for the firm. Okay, so one of the job he does is create employee. Okay, so create employee. That means a new employee like this. Okay, so create I'll just give a new employee. Okay, so create new employee. That is part of the manager's job. So first of all, we have to have one employee class. So I'm gonna define one employee class. The employee class has values like so we have employee will have ID. Okay, so that might be an integer. So employee ID will be there, and employee will have a name. So we'll have a string name. Simply we'll just go with this one, and has ID and name alone as of now. We're just expanding things. So we will be creating a new employee. When a new employee is created, so this will be called. Okay, so new employee will be called. Okay, so if I create a new employee, say employee uh, employee, I can say we are gonna give Sam. Okay, so this is the employee name, or Sam is the employee name we are creating, or we just go with some certain normal variables, employee A, because we'll be getting the name of the employee through employee class. Okay, so once employee class is getting generated, object is getting instantiated for employee class, we will write one employee constructor here. So when new employee is called, it will be called upon. So here this employee's name will be asked. Okay, so that employee will be entering and that will be stored in the name. So for that we will get from the user, so define one scanner class, we'll instantiate. From the console we will get as so employee will enter, that name will be stored in name. So next line beginning, so sc.scanner.nextLine. Okay, so we got our input. So when a new employee is created by the manager, it will go to the constructor, it will ask for the name, so the employee will enter and the name will be stored in the instance variables, and then he will be assigned with the ID, so that you cannot enter. So an employee cannot enter, he can enter his name and he can enter his date of birth, whatever it is, but we are just going to with the thing that employee ID will be given by the firm. Okay, so that means who has to give, employee manager will be giving, so that you will get a unique one, because new employees may come, other managers might assign like this. So we will go and design this as a static. Okay, so emp id gen, so I am just having a one employee id gen, or a value. Okay, so this is having a gen, means a generator kind of thing. Okay, or a reason or a sequence. Okay, so from the sequence, so sequence is starting at 0 initially, I am putting it as a static, meaning so this value will be preserved, that's one thing. Okay, and it is not tied with the employee manager, so even without creating employee manager we will be able to access this variable. Okay, so the employee will just has to get this value and store it here in the employee ID. So employee ID is equal to, he will be accessing this emp ID gen. Okay, so emp ID gen is here, and he will be assigned that cannot be done like this, because this is part of the class name. So to access the static variable, you just have to use a class name dot emp ID gen, and it's a public class, so without that also it will be working. So by default it's a public class, so I'm able to access this class, and it's a static member, so I'm not creating any instance variables. I'm just directly giving the class name is employee manager dot emp id gen, so it is having a value 0. Okay, or I can start with 1, so it will be assigned value 1. So after that, what you have to do, you have to increment. Okay, we have to increment this one. So emp id gen, this value is just put a plus plus, so it increments. So whenever a new employee, create new employee is done again, that employee will be assigned the next ID. Okay, so this is the thing. So I'm having employee class, employee manager class, it has one static variable, and the static variable has been assigned from access from employees constructor like this. Okay, now let us see how to run this, and let us just see employee manager. We are going to create an object of this one in the main function. Employee manager mgr, I just say manager. Okay, so mgr dot create new employee is just giving like this. We have to create the object we instantiated in main, and create new employee is done, so that is going here, create new employee. So I am just creating the constructor, and so we are getting from the line, and we are storing it in the name, and we are asking the employee manager to issue, and then we are just going with this. So one more we'll just create manager dot create, one more create we do. The manager creates one more employee, again one more employee, again one more, again one more. Okay, so we have 1 2 3 4 5. So the manager is creating 5 employees. Okay, so he has created 5 employees. So 5 employee objects are there. So every time whenever he creates, we are just using a variable name A. Okay, so when I call this one, so it creates a employee, and it is stored in a local variable called A. Okay, and then it goes like this. But since we are creating this many employees, it will be a problem, because we are having a local variable which is local to create new employee. Once it is done, we lose this thing. Okay, so we have to put it as a instant variables here. So before getting into that one, I'll just not do this one. Okay, we will just see how single thing is done, and then we'll just find out. So once it is done, I'll just say a dot. Okay, a dot employee ID. So the employee's ID, what's the ID assigned to that? Let us see. Okay, so we'll run this code. So it's asking for enter your name. So I'm entering. Okay, so Sam is entering. So it is displaying. Okay, 1 is a number that has been assigned to that. So employee is created and is present in A, and it is assigned with the value 1. The 1 is got from here. So if you want to confirm, if I just put 5, I am running it. So I'm entering again. So it's just asking for a name. It's just asking, okay, Sam, and the number 5 is being assigned. Okay, let us try creating another employee. Now if I just create another employee, manager dot create one more employee. So what happens here? First call will come here. It will create a employee object, and the variable is pointing to that object. It will be assigning 5 to that. Then again a second call comes, create new employee. So the A will be pointing to the so it is this is a local variable. When that function was over, first time when the function was over, the A will be out of the stack. Okay, so that means it was a dangling object. It will be collected by the garbage collector. So next time again a new employee is created, and it was pointing to A. First object we lost it. Okay, then second object will be pointed by A, and that will be going here. We get the names, but this is static. It will be preserved, so it will be 6. So 6, earlier 5, after giving 5 it was plus plus, so it will give 6 to that. Okay, so when you are seeing that one for A dot employee, it will be showing 6. Okay, the first one's printing. So when it was for the first one, it will print 5, but we will be losing that one. That you have to understand this. So now when I'm creating, so I entered Sam, so it is 5, and I'm entering so it's waiting for name to enter. I'm entering Sam, okay, 5. Again it's waiting for I'm entering Ram, so it is entering 6. So it gives the value 6. So you should be able to get how the static variable mechanism is going on. Okay, but we lose the first object. You have to understand this. We are using a same. So we will be having one employee array. A manager maintains an employee array. So let me just delete this one. The manager is going to have one array. So that's array is a employee array. So employee, we have array. So emp list. So it's gonna have new employee. There are 5 will maintain. Okay, 5 size array is getting created. So when you're asking to create a new one, okay, what we'll be doing is we'll create, okay, one employee ID is the this is the generator. Okay, so maybe 432 is the lastly one. From 400, let us keep it. From 400 you start assigning to people. Okay, so whenever a new employee create request comes, manager.create new employee, so what it has to do, it will be doing emp list. Okay, so 0. Okay, so first it is 0 new employee, so it creates new employee like this. But next time when it comes, it should not be 0, it should not be just overwriting. So we should be having a one static count, employee count will have. Okay, ID might be different from the count. So employee count is starting with say let us start with 0. Okay, initially, because for the array purpose we are just saving. So count, I'll just put this one here. That's a static int. That's a static integer. So this should be preserved whenever we come back again for this thing. So if you're having a static int count, so we have a count here. Where is put up 0 here. Now new employee, we are just assigning a new employee. After this new employee is created, it will be just using the gen. Okay, gen plus plus it will do. So it will increment. Okay, then what we can do, so it will be put up inside this. Then count can be incremented. Count is incremented. Okay, so this is a static, this is a non-static method. Non-static method can access static, no problem. Okay, so next time an employee, one more employee, create an employee comes, it will be put up in 1. Okay, then again if one more employee comes, it will be put up in 2, it will be put up in 3, like this we have. Okay, so maximum size is 5 employees can be created. As of now I put it like this. So now this is a static here to count this one, and this is a static which you are getting from this one. Okay, now after this we want to display, so how many employees are created. So based on that I want to display all employees IDs. So I'm just putting this employee IDs. Display all employee IDs. That is a function we are writing like this. Display all employee IDs, and this display employee IDs will be using the count. Okay, so for int I equal to 0, I less than or equal to count. Okay, so count we have done increment, so we'll do less than, because finally when you come out it was pointing to the the incremented one, but actual is till this place only before this increment. So we are just having a less than, and then I plus plus. So I just want to display the ID, okay, employee ID. So for each of this one, so employee list. So in this employee list, we just put a I, then we just put a dot here, employee ID. Okay, we wanted to see how it is assigned for 0 to 4. So what I'm doing is 4 employees we are creating. The manager creates 4 employees. So whenever a new employee is created, it is asking for the name, and it just goes like this. Employee ID will be got from here 400. So first one will be assigned with 400, then 401, 402, 403. So that will be the 4 displays will be coming here. So after this one, display all employee IDs. We are just again instructing the manager, display all employee IDs. So manager dot just asking to display. So let us see how this goes. So first it's asking for a name. So I'm just entering, say, Shiva. So it's asking for the second. Okay, see here, second employee. It's asking for the second entry. Its ID will be automatically assigned. Okay, so I'm just putting them up. Okay, then it's asking for the third. I'm just putting Sam. I'm just putting the next employee Ram. So 4 employees, Shiva, Uma, Sam, Ram. So it is giving the IDs of them. Okay, so if you want to see with name also, corresponding name also I want to see, means I can just put a okay, so here you will employee name and ID also we can put. So name is also getting displayed. So run this. So here I'll remove this println so that it just prints, and then the name after it will be printing. Okay. So it's asking for the first employee name. So to Shiva. Okay. Then we're entering Kailash. We're entering Ram. We're entering Lakshmi. Okay. So it's assigned Shiva with 400 value, Kailash 401, Ram 402, Lakshmi 403. Like this we are accessing. So you should be able to see how we are accessing this one. Now we're gonna do one simple change here. What I'm going to do is, in this employee constructor, we are actually, what we are doing, we are accessing the employee ID of this employee manager class directly. But that's not a good way to go. So what we can do one static method. Okay, the static method will just do a get ID. Okay, get employee ID. We'll just do get employee ID. One static method, so it's gonna return integer to you. Okay, so it's a static method. One static integer get employee ID we're gonna give. So this one will return this ID. Okay, after it returns the ID, it will increment. So it will return. So we'll start the ID plus plus. Okay, ID plus plus it will do, then it will return. Let us just go like this. So return emp ID. So what it maintains is the ID 400 was assigned to someone. That was the generator's lastly assigned. So it was incremented. 401, it returns that one. So it's a static method. So instead of calling this way, what we can do is we can call this function get emp ID. So get emp ID is a function. It will return, it will give the new ID to you. Okay, so it is, we are concealing the variables. but we cannot access directly like this because it's not a its own method. We have to give a instant variables, but this is a static method. So how to access static method? As I told you, you have to give a class name dot static method. So class name is employee manager. So employee manager dot get emp id. So this one will assign emp id to you. So you see now what we have done, we have created one emp id get employee id static method. That means it is not bound with this one. Okay, even if I create many employee manager classes objects here, if I create many managers, even though many managers are created, this will be only one copy for all the manager objects. Okay, so now we have one manager objects which is creating. Maximum it can create a 5. So that checking and all we didn't do that boundary checking. Just we are keeping it ourselves only 4 times we are calling. So let us call one more time. Okay, 5 employees are getting created. After that we are displaying one manager. So when a manager creates an employee, we give a job for the employee to enter his name. Then the employee object will call again the manager to assign itself an ID. So the manager will supply the ID. Okay, so through this, so manager exposes this static int get employee ID method. So they will call the static method and they will access. You see how we are accessing through class name. Here the accessing is different. This is a mgr is a instance variable instance. Okay, it's an instance of this object. That means it's a reference variable to this object. Okay, here we are not using reference variable, we are using the class name. Okay, so this is a reference variable for employee manager. This is employee manager class name itself we have to use. See, earlier we were using class name dot this one, okay, to access static variable. Now employee manager dot get employee ID, which is a static method here. So now we'll just put this one. So it's asking for entering the name. So I enter Shiva, Ram, Lakshman. Okay. Then I bring Sam and Kailash. Okay, so 5 names, 5 employees getting created. See, Shiva is assigned with 401. You see here, because we are starting first when it is entering this employee for this Shiva, so it goes here, it's asking for the name, I entered Shiva here, so that name is stored here. Then it is asking for the get employee ID, it comes here, emp ID generated. What was the emp ID? Last it was 400. 401 is returned to this one, that is getting stored in emp ID of the employee. Okay, so object Shiva got 401. Then we go here, it will return here, create new employee again comes. So in that manager again this is getting running. So we keep this as a static. Okay, so after this one it was 1. So in 1 we are storing again a new employee. So this emp list contains employee reference to the employee object. Second object is getting created. So it goes here, we entered Ram, and then it's asking for the ID. What was the lastly updated ID? 401. 401 was there, now it is 402. 402 is returned, so that is stored here. The same way we are going for 403, 404, 405 because we are calling 5 times. After this we just call display all manager, display all employees. So it goes here. So the manager knows how many are there because of the count. It just displays the name and the employee ID. Okay, so in this topic we have learned how to access static variables and how to access static methods and why we are putting something as a static method and static variables. Okay, I hope you understood. Thank you.